Vanessa laughed loudly with her friends, calling my food Pigswill just moments after I had served the afternoon tea I had prepared with such care. I am Matilda, 72 years old, a widow and the owner of the house where she lives rent-free. What my daughter-in-law didn't imagine was the surprise visit that would park at my gate in exactly 2 hours. I woke up that day feeling the weight of my 72 years in my finger joints, but with a light heart, as always happened when I entered my kitchen. The house was still silent. The clock on the wall marked 5:30 a.m. It was my sacred time. While the rest of the world slept, and especially while my daughter-in-law Vanessa and my son Robert snored upstairs, I could be the queen of my own castle again. Or at least, that was how I tried to feel to keep from crying. I put the kettle on the stove that my late husband Gerald and I had bought with the sweat of 30 years working at the market stall. The smell of fresh tea soon invaded the kitchen, that scent of comfort, of a damp English garden that soothed the soul. I prepared the dough for the fruit scones that Robert used to love when he was a boy. My fingers, though crooked with time, still knew exactly the right texture of the dough, neither too sticky nor too dry. It was a wisdom not found in books. It was in the skin, in memory. While the scones rose in the oven, spreading that sweet scent of cinnamon and raisins through the entire house, I began to set the table. Not just any table, but a Downton Abbey-style breakfast table, as Vanessa liked to demand, even though she had never washed a teacup in this house. A white lace tablecloth, the bone china cups I inherited from my mother, the clotted cream, the strawberry jam, the fruit cut into perfect cubes. I did all this not out of obligation, but because to love is to serve, and I still loved my son, despite everything. Deep down, I had the hope that if I were useful, if I were perfect, perhaps they would look at me with a little more affection. But the hope of the elderly is the first thing to take a beating. It was 9 a.m. when I heard the sound of heels descending the wooden staircase. It wasn't just Vanessa, it was her friends. Women who spoke loudly, laughed forcedly, and looked at me as if I were a piece of old furniture that needed replacing. "Good morning, Mrs. Higgins," said one of them, Claudia, with a yellow smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning, love," I replied, wiping my hands on my apron. "Tea is on the table. I've made warm scones." Vanessa entered the kitchen like a hurricane, without bidding me good morning. She was overdressed for a Tuesday morning, with heavy makeup and a perfume that fought with the smell of the tea. "Oh, Matilda, I hope you didn't put too much sugar in those scones. We're on a diet, you know," she said, sitting at the head of the table, the place that had always belonged to my Gerald. I merely smiled, biting my tongue, as I had done for the last 5 years since they moved in here with the excuse of looking after me after I was widowed. The truth is, they needed to save money to buy their own flat, a saving that never happened, as the money all went on clothes, holidays to Spain, and parties. I poured tea for the 3 women. They ate voraciously, despite the talk of diets. I stood leaning against the sink, observing. I was invisible to them, except when they needed more milk or a napkin. It was then that the moment happened, which tore my chest in a way not even Gerald's death had managed. Because Gerald's death was sad, but it was natural. This here was pure malice. Vanessa took a generous bite of my scone, the same scone she ate almost entirely every weekend. She chewed, pulled an exaggerated face for her friends, and dropped the fork onto the plate with an irritating clatter. "Guys, honestly," she began, rolling her eyes. I swear I try, but this old woman only knows how to make rubbish. It's heavy, dry, tasteless, something ancient, you know. I don't know how I manage living here eating this every day. It's a sacrifice." The silence lasted a second, and then exploded into laughter. "My friend, you are a saint," said the other one, laughing with her mouth full of my baking. "Having to put up with a mother-in-law is hard enough. Imagine a mother-in-law who can't cook." "Exactly," Vanessa continued, excited by her audience. "I tell Robert we need to hire a real cook, but he pities Mummy. Says it's her only hobby. But look at this, girls, it's like eating plaster." They laughed more. They laughed loudly. They laughed at my scones, laughed at my hands, laughed at my dedication. I felt my face burn, not with shame, but with a sharp physical pain. I had cooked for church fetes my entire life. I raised 3 children on my food. Gerald always said my baking was the best thing in the world. And now, inside my own house, at the table I bought, eating the food I paid for and prepared, this woman humiliated me in front of strangers to feel important. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of them. I didn't give them that satisfaction. I took a deep breath, smelling the tea that now seemed bitter. I smiled. A sad, but firm smile. I walked slowly to the table. "Have you ladies finished?" I asked in a gentle voice. "You can clear everything away, Matilda. Bring more tea, but see if you can make it less like dishwater this time," Vanessa said without even looking at me, scrolling through her phone. I collected the cups in silence. I placed everything in the sink carefully, without banging anything. I washed my hands, dried them well on the embroidered tea towel. "Excuse me," I said. "Go on, go and rest. That's all you do anyway," Vanessa grumbled. I walked down the hallway. Every step was heavy, but it was also a farewell. I entered my bedroom and closed the door. Only then did I allow a solitary tear to run down my wrinkled face. But it was just one. I wiped it away quickly. There was no more time for crying. I looked at the bedside clock. It was 9:30. Not long now. I opened the drawer of my dresser, beneath the flannel nightgowns folded with the scent of lavender. I took out a yellow folder with an elastic band. Inside was a document signed, notarized, and smelling of new paper. I ran my hand over the black letters, feeling the texture. For years, I accepted being the annoying old woman, the useless mother-in-law, the unpaid luxury maid. I accepted it because I thought this was family. I accepted it because I was afraid of being alone. But lonely company is the worst kind of loneliness. And that morning, hearing those cruel laughs in the dining room, I was absolutely certain I had done the right thing. They thought I was a senile old woman who understood nothing. They thought the house was theirs by right, that they were just waiting for me to pop my clogs to take over the deed. Vanessa had even brought an architect in last week, secretly, to measure the living room and knock down the kitchen wall. She thought I was sleeping on the sofa, but I heard everything. "When the old girl kicks the bucket, we'll smash all this down," she had said. That was the final straw. I wasn't just an old woman who made bad food. I was Matilda Higgins. I had been a seamstress, a market stall holder. I had managed the household accounts for 40 years without ever letting us go without a loaf of bread. I could read, I could write, and principally, I knew the value of what was mine. I put the folder in my handbag, the black leather one I use for church. I changed my slippers for comfortable shoes. I applied a pale lipstick and combed my white hair. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back was no longer the victim. She was a woman who had made a decision. Out in the living room, the laughter continued. They had no idea. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. My heart beat fast, not with fear, but with an anxiety mixed with justice. I remembered every insult, every load of dirty laundry I washed, every time I was treated like a child. All of that was about to end. Time dragged. 10:30. At 11 on the dot, I heard the sound. It was unmistakable. The heavy rumble of a diesel engine, air brakes hissing on the quiet suburban street, the sound of something large maneuvering. The floor of the room trembled slightly. I stood up, grabbed my bag. In the living room, the voices stopped. "What is that?" "There's a lorry stopping right out front," I heard Vanessa's voice, now in a tone of irritated curiosity. "Is the neighbor doing work again? Nobody deserves this noise." I opened the bedroom door and walked down the hall. This time my steps were firm. I wasn't going to serve tea. I was going to serve reality. When I reached the living room, Vanessa was at the window, looking through the curtains. Her friends remained seated, looking bored. "Matilda," Vanessa shouted without turning around, "go and see what that lorry wants. Must be a wrong delivery. Tell them to go away. I haven't bought anything today. Not from Amazon anyway." I kept walking to the front door. "It's not a wrong delivery, Vanessa," I said, my voice coming out clear and strong, without trembling. She turned, surprised that I had answered back. "What?" "The lorry isn't a delivery," I repeated, placing my hand on the handle of the front door. "The lorry is for me." I turned the key and opened the door. The morning sun illuminated the room, revealing the dust Vanessa never cleaned. Outside, a massive removal lorry, red and white, occupied the entire front of the house. On the side, in huge blue letters, was written, "Rapid Removals and Storage." Two men in uniforms climbed down from the cab. One of them, with a clipboard in hand, looked at the house number and then at me. "Mrs. Matilda Higgins?" he asked loudly. "That's me, love," I replied, stepping down from the porch. "You can come in. Let's start with the living room." Vanessa ran to the door, eyes wide, face pale beneath the makeup. "Removal? What is this story, Matilda? Are you moving? Are you going to a care home?" she asked, a mix of confusion and relief in her voice. I stopped and looked her right in the eyes. That look of contempt she had given me earlier had disappeared, replaced by the fear of the unknown. "No, my dear," I said with the calm of someone certain of victory. "I'm not going to a care home. The person leaving this house isn't me. Actually, the house is no longer mine, nor yours." "What?" she screamed. Her friends stood up from the sofa, alarmed. "I sold the house, Vanessa. Lock, stock, and barrel. The new owner wants the keys today at noon. And this lorry?" I pointed to the massive vehicle. "It's to take only my things. The rest stays for the new owner or goes in the skip. You have exactly 1 hour to pack your clothes and get out." The silence that followed was heavier than the lorry outside. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no sound came out as the first mover entered the room and asked, "Mrs. Higgins, this sofa the ladies are sitting on, does it go or stay?" Vanessa's scream got stuck in her throat, sounding like a scratched record. While the movers took my green velvet sofa, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, the weight lifting from my back and going straight onto hers. The old woman with the bad food had just served the most indigestible dish of all. Reality. "The sofa stays," I replied to the mover firmly, ignoring the panic stamped on my daughter-in-law's face. That sofa was the first present Gerald gave me when we paid off the mortgage 30 years ago. It goes to my new home. What are my guests using to sit on? Well, they'll have to stand up now. Vanessa's friends, Claudia and the other blonde, whose name I didn't even bother to remember, jumped off the sofa, as if it had caught fire. They adjusted their short skirts, looking from side to side, not knowing if they should laugh as they did at my food, or run for the door. The awkwardness hung in the air, heavy and sour. "Matilda, have you gone mad?" Vanessa finally managed to scream, her shrill voice making my ears ring. She ran to me, grabbing my arm with those long acrylic nails. "You can't sell the house. Robert lives here. I live here. This is illegal. You're senile. I'm calling the police. I'm calling an ambulance." I pulled my arm back with a sharp movement, not with brute force, but with authority. "Take your hand off me, Vanessa," I spoke quietly, but with a tone that made her step back. "You called me a useless old woman 2 hours ago, said my food was Pigswill, laughed in my face in front of your friends. Now you want to decide what I do with my assets?" "But we are your family," she stammered, her face red, sweat starting to ruin her perfect makeup. "Family." I let out a short laugh, devoid of joy. "Family sits at the table and respects the one who baked the bread. Family doesn't treat a grandmother like a maid. Family doesn't plan to knock down the owner's walls while thinking she's asleep." She widened her eyes. Her secret had been discovered. "You heard?" she whispered. "I hear everything, Vanessa. The problem with people who think the elderly are deaf and stupid is that they speak too loudly near us." I walked to the coffee table where my handbag was. I took out not only the yellow folder but a folded bank statement. I sat on a wooden chair the movers hadn't taken yet. I took a deep breath. That moment needed to be savored. For 5 years, since Gerald passed, I had diminished. I shrank to fit in the corner they left for me. I swallowed insults to avoid a fight, thinking of my son Robert. "Oh, Robert works so hard," I thought. "I'll help, I'll wash, I'll iron, I'll cook." And what did I get? Contempt. I looked at her friends, who were already at the door with their bags on their shoulders. "Party's over, girls," I said, "and there won't be any lunch. The old woman here is tired of cooking rubbish food. You can go and eat at that posh restaurant you like so much." They left murmuring hurried apologies, leaving Vanessa alone in the middle of the room, which was beginning to empty. One of the men passed carrying the china cabinet. The sound of the crystal clinking was like music to me. Vanessa grabbed her mobile, hands shaking so much she could barely unlock the screen. "I'm calling Robert. He'll stop this. He'll have you sectioned, Matilda. You'll see." She was dialing frantically. "Call him," I said, crossing my legs and smoothing my skirt. You can call, but tell him to come by taxi or the company car, because the garage needs to be empty by noon as well." While she screamed down the phone at my son, demanding he fly from the office, I allowed myself a moment of memory to understand how I had reached this point, in that chair, watching my life being boxed up by my own choice. It wasn't a decision made today. The humiliation at breakfast was just the final shove, the sign from God I needed not to turn back. It all started 6 months ago. I was in the queue at the bank. I bumped into Mr. Allister, an old solicitor, a friend from Gerald's time. He greeted me, asked about life, and I, in a rare moment of venting, told him I felt like a stranger in my own home. I told him of the jokes, the lack of money they claimed to have while changing cars every year. Mr. Allister, a wise man, adjusted his glasses and said to me, "Mrs. Higgins, you allow them to live there, but the house is in your name entirely. Gerald left everything very well tied up. If you want to sell, you sell. If you want to travel, travel. You have money. The problem is you gave the key to the safe to people who don't know the value of sweat." Those words kept spinning in my head. I went home that day and found the sink filthy from a dinner party they had thrown for friends. No one had washed a glass. There were leftover pizza crusts on the floor. And I, like a fool, started to clean. But while I scrubbed the floor, something changed inside me. I looked at my hands, hands that planted the vegetable garden. Hands that took in sewing to pay for Robert's university. Hands that cared for Gerald until his last breath. These hands deserved rest, not washing up liquid and ingratitude. I began to act in silence. The strategy of those who have lived long is not to make a fuss. The secret is the soul of business, as my father used to say. I looked for an estate agent in another town. I said I wanted a quick sale, lock, stock, and barrel, but needed time to organize the exit. A buyer appeared in 2 weeks, an investor who wanted the land for a clinic. The value was enough for me to buy 2 small flats and still live like a queen for the rest of my life. I signed the contract quietly. I hid the papers at the back of my knickers drawer, the only place Vanessa wouldn't look because she was disgusted by old people things. The money hit my account yesterday. I saw the zeros on the mobile app and nearly fell over. I was a wealthy woman. Wealthy and free, but I still lacked the courage to take the final step. I lacked the courage to say no to my son. Until this morning. Until the bad food. Vanessa's voice brought me back to the present. "He's coming," she announced with a triumphant smile amidst tears. "Robert is coming and he is furious, Matilda. He said to stop everything now." I looked at the clock on the wall which the mover was about to take down. 11:40. "He'll arrive late," I commented. "The deadline is midday." I stood up and walked to the kitchen. The breakfast table was still there with the dirty cups I had collected, the crumbs of the scone she despised. I felt a pang of sadness, not for the house, but for what the house represented. Dreams, family. I thought I would spend my last days here watching grandchildren run, but Vanessa said she didn't want children because it ruined her figure. Robert agreed, saying children were too expensive. So, the big 3-bedroom house with the huge garden served only to shelter their selfishness. I opened the fridge. It was full. Expensive cheeses, imported yogurts, wines, all bought with the money Robert claimed not to have to fix the leak in my bedroom. "Mrs. Higgins," one of the movers called from the kitchen door. "Does the fridge go?" "No, son," I replied. "This one stays. What's inside is a gift for you boys. Take everything you can carry. Cheeses, meats, drinks. Have a barbecue tonight in my honor." The lad grinned from ear to ear. "You're the boss, madam. God bless you." Vanessa appeared at the kitchen door just as the lad grabbed a vacuum-packed joint of beef. "Hey, that's mine!" she screamed. "That beef cost 80 pounds. "It was yours," I corrected. "It was in my fridge, in my house. And since you said my food is bad, I thought it better to donate everything to those with good taste and a good appetite." She huffed, stamping her foot on the floor like a spoilt 5-year-old. "You will regret this so much, Matilda. When the money from this sale runs out, and it will run out soon because old people spend a lot on medicine, you will come crawling back, asking for shelter, and I will laugh. I will laugh just like I did this morning." I looked at her with a calm that frightened me. I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. "Vanessa, my dear," I began, stepping closer to her. Do you think I sold this house for peanuts? Do you think I am an ignoramus who signed any old paper? I took the bank statement from my pocket. I didn't show the amount, just folded it so she could see the logo of the investment bank. The money is already invested, earning interest that would pay your salary as a shop assistant twice over every month without me needing to get out of bed. I bought a beautiful flat in a building with a lift, heated pool, and a 24-hour concierge. And best of all, it's a one-bedroom flat. She frowned, trying to understand. 1 bedroom? That's right, 1 bedroom. Do you know what that means? I asked, smiling. It means there is no guest room, no place for a grown-up son and a lazy daughter-in-law. At that moment, I heard the sound of Robert's car braking sharply in front of the house. Doors slammed. He came running in, panting, suit crumpled, tie loose. "What is happening here?" he bellowed, looking at the men carrying boxes, at the semi-empty room, and finally at me and Vanessa in the kitchen. "Mum, have you gone mad?" They sent a message in the family group saying there's a removal lorry here. Robert had his father's face, but his eyes were weak. Eyes of someone who never had to fight for anything because Mummy always fixed it. "Hello, my son," I said. "You arrived just in time to help your wife pack her bags." "Mom, stop this." He advanced, trying to use that voice of authority he used with his employees, but which never worked with me. "Tell that lorry to stop now. This house is ours. You can't sell without my signature." "Ah, Robert," I sighed, tired. "You should have read your father's will with more attention. The house was mine, 100% mine, and I sold it." "But what about us?" he asked, reality starting to hit. "Where will we go? We don't have savings right now. We're paying for the car. The credit cards are maxed out. Mum, you can't do this to your own son." "I can, Robert, and I am. Not out of malice, but out of self-respect. And perhaps, just perhaps, to teach you what your father and I learned very early. Life doesn't give you a free lunch forever, especially when you complain about the food." He looked at me, shocked. For the first time in years he saw me, not the little old lady who served tea, but Matilda, the matriarch. "Where will you live?" he asked, voice failing. "Don't worry about me. I know how to get by. I always have. The question now, my son, is, do you?" The clock struck 12. The removal foreman entered the room, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Mrs. Higgins, the lorry is full. Just the personal items you separated left. And, well, the new owner has just arrived. He's outside in the car waiting for the keys." Robert's heart stopped. I saw it in his eyes. The penny dropped with the weight of an anvil. Vanessa started to cry, an ugly, desperate cry. "Robert, do something. I have nowhere to go. My clothes, my shoes." I walked to the front door. The midday sun was strong. Outside, a distinguished gentleman stepped out of a black car. It was the buyer. I turned to my son and daughter-in-law, standing in the middle of the empty room, surrounded only by the dust kicked up by the removal of the furniture. "You have 10 minutes to grab what is yours and leave via the back door," I said, holding the bunch of keys in my hand. "Because I am going to hand over these keys now. And from this moment on, if you remain here, it will be trespassing." Robert looked at me with hatred, with hurt, but also with respect, a respect born of fear. "You are a cold woman, Mother. I never imagined." I smiled. That mysterious smile only someone who has lived 7 decades can give. "I am not cold, my son. I am just a cook who got tired of serving a banquet to those who have no taste." I turned my back and went out to the porch, feeling the sun on my face and freedom in my chest. But I knew the battle wasn't over yet. They wouldn't give up so easily. Robert had the key to my old safe deposit box at the bank, one I forgot to ask for back. And inside there was something he thought he could use against me. While I walked down the steps to hand over the key to my old life, I heard Robert shout to Vanessa, "Get the green folder in the study cupboard, quick, before she remembers." I stopped. The green folder. I had completely forgotten about it. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Robert's twisted smile in the rearview mirror of the taxi. He was holding the green folder like a trophy of war. Inside was a power of attorney giving him full rights, which I signed years ago when I had hip surgery. With that paper, he could clear my account before the removal lorry arrived at my new address. The taxi turned the corner, and the image of my son and daughter-in-law on the pavement, surrounded by bin bags stuffed with clothes, disappeared, but the danger did not. I leaned my head back on the synthetic leather seat of the car, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. The driver, a sympathetic lad listening to the radio quietly, looked at me in the mirror. "Are you all right, love? You look pale. Want me to stop at a chemist?" "No need, son. Just family matters," I replied. Family matters. What a pretty term to describe a war. I knew exactly what Robert would do. He is predictable. Vanessa must be screaming in his ear right now. "Go to the bank, Robert. Transfer everything before the old hag spends it. With this power of attorney, we can annul the sale." They thought they had an ace up their sleeve. What they forgot is that I was the one who shuffled the deck. I grabbed my mobile from my bag. My hands, which so often needed dough and hemmed trousers, now typed with surgical precision. I didn't call Robert to beg. I didn't send a text swearing at them. The secret of victory, I learned this watching Gerald negotiate cattle, is not to make noise while you set the trap. I called Mr. Allister directly. "Allister, it's Matilda." Robert took the green folder, the one with the power of attorney from 2018. On the other end of the line, I heard paper rustling. Allister was quick. "Calm down, Matilda. That power of attorney isn't valid if we revoke it now, but he might try to use it if the bank isn't updated. Where does he bank?" "Same bank as me, the branch on the high street. He'll try to transfer the house sale money to the joint account I never closed. I'm sending the electronic revocation now. But Matilda, the banking system might take a few hours to update. If he gets to the cashier first..." "Leave it with me, Allister. I cut in with a coldness I didn't know I possessed. You do the paperwork, I'll handle the scene." I hung up and changed the destination. "Driver, change of plan. We're not going to the new building yet. Take me to the main bank on the high street, please, and step on it. I have a date with my past." While the taxi cut through traffic, I adjusted my dress, took a silk scarf from my bag one Vanessa said was tacky, and tied it around my neck. I applied another layer of lipstick. I wasn't going to enter that bank as the pitiful widow. I was going to enter as the VIP client who had just deposited a fortune. I arrived at the branch 10 minutes before Robert. I knew he would be late because Vanessa wouldn't get on a bus, and getting an Uber to take so much junk from a last-minute move isn't easy. I entered the branch. The cold air conditioning hit my warm skin. The security guard, Mr. Joel, who had known me for 20 years, smiled. "Mrs. Higgins, haven't seen you in a while. Did you bring that lemon drizzle cake?" "Not today, Joel. Today I'm here for big business." I winked at him. "Is the manager, Mr. Giles in?" I was taken straight to the manager's desk. Giles, a man of 40 whom I saw grow up in the church, stood up immediately. He had seen my account balance that morning. The treatment changes when the zeros increase. "Mrs. Higgins, what an honor. Coffee? Water?" "I'll take a coffee, Giles, but no sugar. Life is sweet enough today." I sat down, crossing my legs. "Giles, I need a favor. A discreet favor." I explained the situation in a few words. I didn't recount the sordid details of the bad food, but I made it clear. My son would try to use an old document to move money that wasn't his. Giles turned red with anger. He liked me. "Mrs. Higgins, that's fraud. If he tries, I'll call the police." "No." I raised my hand. "No police, no scandal. I want him to try. I want him to taste victory on the tip of his tongue, and then bite his own tongue. Just block the operation at the crucial moment and let me watch from here, from that chair behind the fern." Giles hesitated, but nodded. "As you wish." I stayed there sipping my coffee, strategically hidden behind a huge ornamental plant decorating the glass office. From there, I had a perfect view of the counters and the service desk. 20 minutes later, they arrived. It was a pathetic scene. Robert was sweating, shirt open at the chest, holding the green folder as if it were a Bible. Vanessa came right behind, dragging a designer suitcase across the bank floor, making a noise that attracted everyone's stares. She wore huge sunglasses, trying to hide a face swollen from crying, but her arrogant posture remained the same. They went straight to the priority counter. Robert, of course, thought he had the right to priority for representing an elderly person. I saw Robert speak loudly, gesturing. He took the paper from the folder and slammed it on the counter. The cashier, a young girl called Jessica, took the paper, looked at the computer screen, frowned, and called the supervisor. My heart beat with the past. I didn't feel fear. I felt a clinical curiosity, as if I were watching a soap opera. The supervisor pointed to Giles's desk. Robert and Vanessa walked over, hurried. I shrank a little in the leather armchair, becoming invisible behind the broad leaves of the fern. Giles received them standing, serious. "Can I help you?" "I am Robert Higgins, son of Matilda Higgins," he said, puffing out his chest. "My mother, well, Mommy isn't right in the head. Old age, you know how it is. She made an impulsive property sale today, and I need to block the funds for her safety. I have here the power of attorney with full rights." I heard Vanessa's impatient sigh beside him. "Just transfer everything to our joint account, Robert, before she donates it all to some church or falls for an internet scam," she hissed loud enough for me to hear. That hurt not the attempted theft, but the ease with which they painted me as incapable. Not right in the head. How many times do the elderly hear that just because they decide to live their own way? Giles took the paper, analyzed it with feigned calm, typed something on the keyboard. The silence in the room was absolute, just the clack, clack, clack of keys. "Mr. Higgins," Giles began, his voice professional, "this power of attorney is from 2018. "It's indefinite," Robert retorted quickly. "I consulted my solicitor. It's valid." "It was," Giles corrected without looking up from the screen. "Until 10 minutes ago." Robert froze. Vanessa took off her sunglasses. "What do you mean?" she asked, voice thin. "The power of attorney was revoked legally, and the notification has just arrived on our system." Giles lied about the timing, protecting my secret. Furthermore, the account holder was here and changed all passwords and security protocols. The joint account has been closed. The balance was transferred to a shielded investment account that can only be accessed with the holder's biometrics. Robert turned white as paper. He looked at the green folder in his hands as if it had turned to ash. "But she can't have done that so fast. She was in a removal lorry," Robert shouted, losing composure. "Where is she?" "The bank cannot provide information on the location of clients, sir," Giles said firmly. "This is absurd," Vanessa exploded. "We are her family. We are on the street. Do you have any idea what that is? We have nowhere to go tonight. The money was our right. I put up with that old woman and her disgusting food for 5 years to guarantee that money." The whole bank stopped. The silence was broken by the shouted confession of her greed. Vanessa put her hand over her mouth, realizing what she had said. The customers in the queue looked on with disapproval. It was at that moment I decided it was time for my monologue. I stood up from the armchair behind the fern. The sound of my medium heels on the granite floor echoed. "Good afternoon, Vanessa. Good afternoon, Robert." The two spun their bodies in slow motion. The expression of terror on their faces was worth every penny I had in the account. "Mum," Robert whispered. I walked until I was beside Giles. I rested a hand on the desk, demonstrating that this territory was mine. "So, that was it?" I asked, looking at Vanessa. "You put up with my disgusting food?" "Interesting, because when asking for money for Botox, you never complained that my 20-pound notes were old or dirty." Vanessa stepped back, hitting the suitcase and nearly tripping. "Mrs. Higgins, do you want me to call security to remove these people?" Giles asked loudly. Robert looked at me with pleading eyes. That look of a boy who made a mess and wants Mummy to fix it. But the boy grew up and became a weak man. "Mom, please," he started quietly so no one would hear. "Vanessa is nervous. We have nowhere to go. Hotels are expensive. Release at least £5,000 for us to sort ourselves out. Then we can talk." I looked at my son. I remembered him small, running in the kitchen, waiting for the scones to come out of the oven. Where did I go wrong? Perhaps in giving everything, perhaps in protecting too much. To love is also to let someone fall on their face. "Robert," I spoke with a calm maternal voice, but hard as rock. "You are 40 years old. You have health. You have a job. Vanessa has health. You have a suitcase full of designer clothes. You are rich in health and poor in character." I opened my bag and took out a 50-pound note. I placed it on Giles's desk. "Here. This is enough for a snack at the bakery on the corner. They say the food there is excellent. Much better than mine, and enough for the bus fare to Vanessa's mother's house in Grimsby." "My mother?" Vanessa squeaked. "I haven't set foot in that council estate in 10 years. I hate that place." "Then you'd better start liking it," I smiled. because it's the only roof you have left. I turned to Giles. Giles, my dear, thank you for the coffee. It was delicious. Now, if you'll excuse me, the removal lorry must be waiting at my new flat. I have to christen my new kitchen. I'm going to make dinner for myself, perhaps a risotto. I left the bank with my head held high. I didn't look back, but I heard. I heard Vanessa crying and Robert trying to argue with security who were inviting him to leave. I got into the taxi waiting for me. To the Horizon building, please, I said to the driver. The journey to my new home was silent, but my mind was working at 1,000 miles an hour. I had won the battle of money. I had won the battle of the house, but I knew the emotional war hadn't ended. The public humiliation at the bank would make Vanessa want revenge, and petty people, when cornered, usually attack where it hurts most. I arrived at the new building. The concierge, a polite gentleman, opened the gate. The lorry was already unloading. I went up in the lift to the 7th floor. I opened the door to flat 702. The smell of fresh paint embraced me. It was small, yes. Open-plan living and kitchen, 1 bedroom, a nice bathroom, but it had a glass-enclosed balcony with a view of the city. I went to the balcony. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. I breathed in the air of freedom. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't need to worry about anyone's dinner. I didn't need to hear criticism. But then my mobile vibrated in my bag. A message. It was from Claudia, one of Vanessa's friends who was at breakfast. I hesitated before opening. Was she going to insult me too? I opened the message. It was a screenshot of a post by Vanessa on social media, an old photo of me, taken at a moment when I was disheveled doing housework. The caption read, "It is very sad to see how senility destroys families. My mother-in-law, in a fit, threw us out of the house and stole our savings. We are on the street. We need urgent legal and psychiatric help to have her sectioned. Share to help an elderly woman who doesn't know what she's doing." I felt a chill down my spine. She was playing dirty. She was trying to turn society against me, using the crazy old lady card. In minutes, that could go viral in the neighborhood, at church, among acquaintances. I looked at the city down below. The lights were starting to turn on. "Ah, Vanessa," I whispered to the wind. "You want to play the internet game? You want to talk about reputation?" I walked to my box of important things the mover had just left on the living room floor. I opened it and took out an old recipe notebook. But it wasn't just for food recipes, it was where I noted everything. Dates, amounts, loans Robert asked for and never paid back. The times Vanessa took my card secretly. And most importantly, inside that notebook was a photo. A photo I took months ago when they arrived at dawn, drunk, and Vanessa dropped something from her bag in the living room, something that proved their tight budget wasn't spent on food nor the house. I picked up my mobile again. They wanted a public war, they would get one. But I wasn't going to fight with lies. I was going to fight with the naked, raw truth. I sat on my green velvet sofa, which fit perfectly in the new lounge, and opened the camera on my phone. I adjusted my hair, smiled that smile of someone with a clean conscience, and pressed the record button. Good evening, my friends. My name is Matilda. I am 72 years old, and today I am going to teach a different recipe, not for scones. It is the recipe for how to get rid of parasites in 3 steps. The red recording button pulsed on my mobile screen like a racing heart. I knew that once I started speaking, there would be no turning back. Vanessa had dropped the bomb of slander on the internet, saying I was mad. What she forgot is that the truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. It just needs to be said with clarity, preferably with proof in hand. I took a deep breath, adjusted the collar of my dress, and looked into the camera lens as if I were looking into the eyes of every person who, for years, saw me only as a shadow in my own home. Good evening, I began, my voice coming out firm, without the tremor my hands felt. My name is Matilda Higgins. I am 72 years old. Today, I was publicly accused by my daughter-in-law of being senile, of having thrown my family out of the house in a fit of madness. She asks you to share to help me. Well, I also ask you to share this video not to help me, but to learn. I held up the hardcover notebook, the old one where I noted every penny that entered and left that house in the last 5 years. They say the devil is in the details, but I say the truth lives at the point of a pencil. Vanessa said my food was bad, Pigswill, in her words this morning. But here in this notebook, I have the record that the Pigswill I cooked saved the couple around £2,000 a month in supermarkets and restaurants. Money which, according to the statement I have here, I showed the printed sheet quickly, hiding the bank details but showing the shop names, was spent on handbags, shoes, and aesthetic clinics. I paused. The silence in the flat was absolute, but I could imagine the noise this would make out there. They say I need psychiatric intervention. Curious, because when I signed the check to pay my son Robert's gambling debt in 2022 so he wouldn't lose the car, my signature was considered very lucid. When I sold my jewelry to pay the deposit on Vanessa's new car, because she said she needed it for work, my sanity was not questioned. I moved my face closer to the camera, revealing not anger, but a tired disappointment. I didn't throw my family out because I went mad. I moved out because I decided to stay sane. I sold the house that was mine. The money is with me. And regarding the accusation of theft, I smiled. A sad smile. I merely removed my name from a bottomless pit. To all friends and neighbors who are worried, I am fine. I am safe. And for the first time in years, I am going to eat the food I like, without anyone pulling a face. Good evening. I ended the recording. My fingers hesitated for a second over the publish button, but the image of Vanessa laughing at my scones and then her lying post calling me demented gave me the final courage. I pressed it. The video uploaded, the blue bar loaded to the end, published successfully. I dropped the phone on the sofa as if it were on fire. I got up and went to the kitchen to make my chamomile tea. My legs were shaking a little, but it was that shaking after danger passes, you know? That adrenaline dump. 5 minutes later, my mobile started pinging. It didn't stop. Notifications of likes, comments, shares. I picked up the device with trepidation. The first message was from Mrs. Potts, my neighbor of 30 years. Matilda, my friend, I knew it. That tart always looked at me funny. We are with you. The prayer group is already sharing. Then a message from a number not in my contacts, but the photo was unmistakable. Claudia, Vanessa's friend who was at breakfast. Mrs. Higgins. I'm sorry about this morning. I laughed out of politeness. You know what Vanessa is like. I saw the video. You were very brave. By the way, those scones were divine. If you need anything, let me know. I laughed alone in the empty room. The loyalty of these fair-weather friends lasts exactly until the truth appears. But the peace was short-lived. About half an hour after the post, the phone rang. It was Robert. I didn't answer. It rang again and again. He sent audio messages. I pressed play on the first one. His voice was choked, desperate. Mum, take that down now. You have no idea what you've done. People at the office are watching. My boss follows me. Mum, you're going to ruin my career. The second audio was Vanessa screaming in the background. You vengeful old hag. I'll sue you for exposure. Delete that or I'm coming over to break that door down. I blocked the number. The vengeful old hag was now too busy drinking tea and enjoying the city view. The night passed. I slept in my new bed with cotton sheets I bought without asking anyone's opinion. I woke up with the sun hitting the window, something that never happened in my old room, which was damp and dark. I made my coffee alone. The silence I so feared now seemed like music. At 10 a.m., the intercom rang. It was the concierge, Mr. Elliot. Mrs. Higgins? His voice sounded worried. There is a couple down here, Robert and Vanessa. They say they are your children and that you are unwell and not answering the phone. They want to come up. The man is a bit agitated, Mrs. Higgins. I sighed. They wouldn't give up. The public shame hadn't stopped them. On the contrary, it had cornered them. And a cornered animal bites. Mr. Elliot, I am perfectly fine. Do not let them up. But, I thought quickly, if I didn't go down, they would make a scene in the lobby. They would scream that I was being held against my will, call the police, put on a show. I needed to end this face to face, with witnesses. Tell them I'm coming down. And Mr. Elliot, stay close by, please. Will do, Mrs. Higgins. I went down in the lift, feeling my stomach turn, but I kept my posture. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the owner of my destiny. When the lift doors opened in the lobby, I saw the scene through the glass door. Vanessa was wearing the same clothes as yesterday, crumpled. Her hair was tied in a messy bun. Robert paced from side to side, biting his nails. Upon seeing me, Vanessa ran to the glass, banging with her open palm. "Open this! Open it now!" she shouted, voice hoarse. Mr. Elliot opened the glass door but placed himself between me and them. "Good morning," I said, stopping at a safe distance. "What do you want? Didn't we already speak at the bank?" "What do we want?" Robert advanced, face red with anger and shame. There were other residents passing, looking on curiously. "You destroyed us, Mom. That video has 5,000 shares. People at work are sending me jokes about gambling debts. You exposed my life." "I exposed the truth, Robert," I replied calmly. "You told a lie about my sanity. I told a truth about your accounting. Those with nothing to hide have nothing to fear." "You are going to delete that video now and make another one apologizing," Vanessa demanded, pointing her finger in my face over the concierge's shoulder. "You'll say you got confused, that you mixed up your medication. If you don't do this, we'll file a lawsuit for moral damages and reverse abandonment of a vulnerable person." "Reverse abandonment?" I laughed, incredulous. "Vanessa, you invent laws with the same ease you invent diets." "Don't play with us, Matilda," Robert shouted. "We are in the car. We slept in the car at a service station because Vanessa refused to go to Grimsby and we have no money for a hotel. Do you have any idea? Your daughter-in-law sleeping in a car while you are here in this posh building?" "The car I helped pay for," I reminded him. "And the hotel money? Well, if Vanessa sells that handbag that costs £3,000 and is in my notebook as a pharmacy purchase, you can pay for a week in a 5-star hotel." They stopped. The shock of knowing that I knew exactly where every lie came from paralyzed them. "Do you think I'm stupid?" I continued, raising my voice slightly so the neighbors pretending to wait for the lift could hear. "Think that because I stayed in the kitchen I didn't see the hidden shopping bags arriving? Think I didn't see the statements coming through the post that you hid?" I opened my handbag. "Robert, you said I exposed the gambling debt, but I didn't show the proof in the video. I only spoke of it. Do you want to see the proof?" I took a brown envelope from my bag. Inside, the photo I mentioned, a photo of a debt collection letter from a loan shark that arrived at the house 3 months ago, a threatening letter. Robert turned pale. He recognized the envelope. "Mum, where did you find that?" "I tore that letter up." "You tore it up and threw it in the kitchen bin. Who do you think takes the rubbish out in that house, Robert? Who do you think separates the recycling? I taped the letter back together. I read the threats. And do you know what I did?" He shook his head, eyes wide with terror. "I paid it," I said, throwing the envelope at his feet. "I went to the bank, withdrew from my emergency savings, and paid the slip attached for the financial consultant, which we know is a front. I paid £10,000 so they wouldn't break my son's legs." Vanessa looked at Robert, shocked. £10,000? "Robert, you said you got that money as a bonus. You said you paid for the New Year trip with a bonus." "I lied," he shouted at her. "I needed to pay or they were going to kill me." "You used your mother's money to pay for gambling and said it was your bonus?" Vanessa was hysterical now. "And we were traveling on loan shark money paid by your mother?" "Hypocrisy is a beautiful thing, isn't it?" I commented, crossing my arms. "Vanessa, you complain about my food but ate and traveled at the expense of my senility. Robert, you say I am incapable but accepted my hard-earned money to save your skin." I took a step forward. The concierge stepped back respectfully, realizing I no longer needed protection. My protection was my morality. "It's over," I decreed. "The well has run dry. The video stays up. If you sue me, I take this loan shark letter to the judge. I take the notebook. I ask for a breach of bank secrecy and show every transfer I made to you. Want to risk it?" Robert lowered his head. He knew he was defeated. He knew that in a court, he would leave in handcuffs or humiliated. "Let's go, Vanessa," he murmured, picking up the envelope from the floor. "What? No, we need money. Robert, do something." She shook his arm. "It's over, Vanessa. She has everything. She has proof of everything," he shouted at his wife, frustration exploding. "We're going to your mother's. It's finished." He turned to me. There were tears in his eyes, tears of a spoilt boy who finally grew up the hard way. "Goodbye, Mum." "Goodbye?" "No, Robert," I corrected, feeling a pang in my chest but maintaining firmness. "Until another day. When you become a real man, and not this project of a person you are today, you can ring my intercom. Perhaps I'll serve you a tea. But the scone. Ah, the scone you'll have to bring from the bakery. They turned their backs. I watched my son and daughter-in-law leave through the front door of the building, defeated, walking towards the car parked haphazardly on the street. The midday sun shone on them, illuminating the raw reality of their lives without my support. I turned to Mr. Elliot and the neighbors who were watching, mouths open. Sorry for the disturbance, neighbors. Family matters. Sometimes you need to clean the house, and it kicks up a bit of dust. An elegant lady holding a small dog in her arms smiled at me and started to clap, timidly at first, then stronger. Another resident joined in. Mr. Elliot smiled and gave a thumbs up. I didn't smile, just nodded, thanking them for the respect. I went up to my flat, entered, closed the door, and rested my forehead against the cold wood. I didn't cry. I had already cried everything there was to cry. Now I felt only an immense emptiness, the emptiness of someone who has cut off a gangrenous limb to save the body. I walked to the balcony, looked at the city. I had won. I had my dignity, my money, my home, but the victory had a bittersweet taste. That was when my mobile rang again. I thought about ignoring it, thinking it was more hate from Vanessa, but the ringtone was different. It was a video call. I looked at the screen. It was an international number. I answered, curious. The pixelated image formed. It was a young woman, curly hair and a smile that reminded me of someone. Behind her, a snowy landscape. Grandma Matilda? The girl said with a slightly accented voice. I narrowed my eyes. Who is speaking? It's me, Grandma Beatrice, Richard's daughter. My heart stopped. Richard, my middle son, the one who left England 20 years ago after a fight with his father and never sent news again. The lost Uncle Robert said was dead. Beatrice. My voice failed. My granddaughter? Yes, Grandma. Sorry to call out of the blue, but your video reached us here in Canada. Someone shared it in a group of Brazilian expats, and my dad saw it. Your father, Richard, saw it? He saw it, Grandma, and he's crying here next to me. He thought you didn't want to know him because of the fight with Granddad, but when he saw you speaking of injustice, of strength, he said, "That is my mother." The camera turned, and there he was. Grier, older, but with Gerald's eyes. "Bless you, Mum," he said, voice choked. "Forgive my absence?" The tears I held back before Robert and Vanessa finally fell, but they were tears of renewal. God takes with one hand and gives with the other. I had lost a son to greed but had just rediscovered another brought back by the truth. "God bless you, my son," I replied, touching the phone screen. "Mum, we saw what they did." "Are you alone there?" Richard asked. "I am alone, but I am well. I am free." "Not for long." He smiled. "Beatrice has just bought tickets. We are coming to England, Mum. We want to meet the grandma with the bad food the internet is loving. And Mum, I'm dying for one of your scones." I hung up the phone minutes later, with the promise they would arrive in 2 days. I looked at my silent flat. It didn't seem empty anymore. It seemed prepared to receive those who truly deserved to be there. But before I could relax completely, the doorbell rang. Not the intercom, the door to my flat. I found it strange. The concierge hadn't announced anyone. Richard was in Canada. Robert and Vanessa had gone. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. There was no one, just a yellow envelope on the corridor floor. I opened the door with the security chain on, suspicious. I picked up the envelope. No sender, just my name written in an elegant, old-fashioned cursive. I closed the door and tore open the paper. Inside there were no threats or bills. There was a heavy, old iron key and a short note. "Mrs. Higgins, I saw your video. I knew your husband Gerald. He left me something to keep for you to be delivered only when you were free of the anchors, as he used to say. I think the moment has arrived. This key opens safety deposit box 304 at the central bank in town. What is inside will change not only your retirement but the history of your entire family. Go tomorrow." Signed, an old friend who never forgets a favor. I held the cold key in my hand. Gerald had secrets he hid from me for protection, or perhaps waiting for me to have the strength I demonstrated today. What would my husband, a simple market trader, keep in a bank vault that could change family history? Tomorrow I would find out. The old woman with the bad food was about to discover that the main course hadn't even been served yet. The heavy steel door of box number 304 opened with a soft squeak, releasing a smell of old paper and kept secrets. I was alone in the bank's private room, but I felt my late Gerald's hand on my shoulder. What I found in there wasn't just wealth, it was the final proof that true love protects even after death. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from a silent reverence. Inside the cold metal box was a package wrapped in brown paper and a handwritten letter in the firm cursive I knew so well. The handwriting of the man with whom I shared 40 years of markets, struggle, and dreams. I took the letter first. The paper was yellowed at the edges. My dearest Matilda, if you are reading this, it is because you have finally decided to fly solo. I always knew you were stronger than me, but I also knew your mother's heart was your greatest weakness. I saw how Robert grew up spoiled. I saw how Vanessa looked at our money and not our history. For years, I separated a part of the profit from our stall. Remember that supplier money I said had gone up? Well, I wasn't paying more for the oranges. I was buying gold, Matilda, and land. Because I was afraid of dying and leaving you in their hands. In this box are the deeds to 3 commercial properties in the town center, which I bought at auctions in the 90 seconds, and some gold bars. All in your maiden name, so as not to enter common probate. This is yours, not for Robert to pay debts, nor for Vanessa to get plastic surgery. It is for you to realize that dream you whispered to me on our honeymoon, and never mentioned again. Be happy, my queen, and make those scones only you know how. With love, Gerald. Tears fell on the paper, staining the blue ballpoint ink. I wept. I wept with longing. I wept with gratitude. And I wept realizing that all the time I felt diminished by my daughter-in-law and son, the man of my life was silently building my throne. I opened the brown package. The golden shine illuminated the windowless room. There was enough there for me to live 10 lives. But what touched me most were the deeds, properties in the center. Today they were worth millions. I took a deep breath, wiped my face, and put everything back. I didn't need to spend that now. Knowing I had that power was enough. The old woman with the bad food was now secretly one of the wealthiest women in the borough. I left the bank with my head held high. The sun outside seemed to shine brighter. Manager Giles offered me an escort to the taxi, treating me like a head of state. I accepted, of course. The new Matilda didn't refuse kindness, but didn't depend on it either. I went back to my flat, tidied everything, bought fresh flowers, prepared the scone dough. The kitchen in the new flat was compact but functional. While I rubbed the butter into the flour, I felt that ancient peace return. The kitchen was never my prison. It was my sanctuary. They were the ones who turned it into captivity with their ingratitude. At 6 p.m., the intercom rang. Mrs. Higgins, there is an international car arriving here. The lad says he is your son. My heart raced. Let him up, Mr. Elliot. It is my son, yes. The son life gave back to me. I opened the flat door and waited in the corridor. When the lift opened, I saw Richard, 20 years older than the last time I saw him. Gray hair, expression lines of someone who worked hard in the cold of the north. Beside him, Beatrice, my granddaughter with a radiant smile and curious eyes. Mom. Richard dropped the suitcases on the floor and ran. His hug was tight, desperate, full of dammed-up longing. He smelled of cold and pine. A different smell, but the hug was home. Forgive me, Mom. Forgive me for taking so long. He sobbed on my shoulder. You are forgiven, my son. The important thing is you came back. I stroked his hair, feeling complete again. Beatrice approached shyly. Hi, Grandma. Can I give you a hug too? You must, my dear. I pulled her into the collective hug. We went in. The house smelled of baking scones. Richard closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. My God, that smell. I dreamed of this smell for 20 years in Canada. Vanessa said your food was bad? That woman has no palate, Mum. She has poison in her tongue. We laughed. A light, loose laugh. We sat at the table. I served tea and warm scones. Richard ate the first piece with eyes closed, groaning with satisfaction. This isn't food, Mum. This is cultural heritage. We talked for hours. He told me about his life, his engineering company, how he built everything from zero without asking anyone for a penny. He told me he saw my video on the internet and felt such anger at his brother that he wanted to catch the first plane to sort him out. "No need, my son," I said, holding his hand. "Life has already sorted Robert out." And it had. News travels fast in a small world. Days later, Claudia, that gossiping friend of Vanessa's, sent me a message. She wanted to look good, of course, but she brought me the information I deep down wanted to know. Robert and Vanessa were living at her mother's house in Grimsby, a dreary coastal town 4 hours from here. Vanessa's mother, Mrs. Lourdes, was a woman of fiber, tough as old boots, who didn't tolerate laziness. Claudia told me Vanessa was working behind the counter of the family bakery, serving tea and listening to customer complaints. The irony of fate was whimsical. The woman who complained about being served now had to serve to survive. Robert had got a job as a door-to-door salesman selling insurance. The luxury car had been returned to the bank. Vanessa had to sell her designer clothes to second-hand shops online to pay for the bus fare. They called me a few times. I didn't answer. I sent just one message to Robert. "I am busy living. When you learn to be human beings, we can talk. Until then, listen to Mrs. Lourdes. She cooks very well." As months passed, my life took a turn I would never have imagined. Richard and Beatrice went back to Canada, but with the promise of coming every Christmas. They wanted to take me, but I said no. My life was here. I had plans. Remember the dream Gerald mentioned in the letter? The honeymoon dream. I told him I wanted to have a place where people could eat and feel embraced, not just fed, a place where no one ate alone. I used one of the town center properties. I didn't sell, I built. With the gold money, I restored an old townhouse that was falling to pieces on the lot. I renovated everything, kept the Georgian architecture, the large sash windows, the tiled floors. 6 months after moving day, I inaugurated Matilda's kitchen. Comfort and memory. It isn't a posh restaurant with tiny plates and French names no one can read. It is a restaurant with communal tables. Large, solid wood tables where strangers sit side by side and become friends. The menu? The same that Vanessa called Pigswill. Roast chicken with stuffing, shepherd's pie, slow-cooked pork belly, rice pudding, and of course the famous fruit scones, which are now served complimentary on arrival. On opening day, the queue went round the block. People who saw my video, neighbors, people who identified with my story. I was at the door wearing an impeccable white chef's jacket with my name embroidered in gold. When I opened the doors, I was applauded. Not for being rich, not for being famous on the internet, but for having resisted. I saw familiar faces in the queue. Claudia was there paying for lunch. She looked at me with shame, but praised the food. I smiled and thanked her. Her money is worth the same as anyone else's, and hers would help maintain my social project. Yes, because Matilda's kitchen has a detail. Whoever cannot pay eats for free. They just have to wash dishes or help peel potatoes for an hour. It is my way of guaranteeing no one goes through what I went through feeling like a burden. Here, everyone is useful. On a Tuesday afternoon, a year after everything, I was at the till closing the day's accounts. Business had been excellent. I looked at the glass door and saw a couple standing on the pavement, looking at the illuminated sign. It was them. Robert was thinner, hair cut short, wearing a simple shirt and jeans. Vanessa was without makeup, hair its natural color, holding a cloth bag. They looked normal, tired, but real. They didn't come in. They stayed looking from afar, seeing the success, seeing the happy people inside. Robert pointed to me at the till. Our eyes met through the glass. He didn't ask for money with his look. He didn't make a victim's face. He simply lowered his head in a gesture of respect and shame and touched Vanessa's arm. They turned and walked away, heading for the bus stop. I felt a pang of emotion, but I swallowed the tears. They were learning. Pain is a severe teacher, but efficient. Perhaps in a distant future, they might enter and sit at the table, but not today. Today, the table belongs to those who deserve it. I closed the till, grabbed my bag, left the restaurant, and breathed the night air. The city was lit up. I took my mobile, made one last post for my now 500,000 followers. A photo of me smiling, holding a tray of warm scones in front of my packed restaurant. The caption simple and direct, as I learned to be. They said I only made bad food. They said I was old and useless. Today I feed hundreds of souls every day. Old age isn't the end of the line, my friends. It is just the moment we finally learn to season life to our own taste. Never let anyone say your place isn't on top of the world. And if they complain about your tea, buy the bank, buy the building, and serve the banquet of your victory. I put the phone away. The driver of my private car opened the door for me. Home, Mrs. Higgins. Yes, Charles, home. While the car glided through the streets, I looked at the starry sky. I winked at a star that shone brighter than the others. Thank you, Gerald. The scones turned out perfect. And so I, Matilda Higgins, ceased to be the humiliated mother-in-law to become the protagonist of my own story. Because the sweetest revenge isn't the evil we return, but the success we build on the stones they threw at us.